September 2024 was a pretty crazy month. These last few weeks have been pretty eventful, unlike anything that I have seen in my lifetime. And we're leading up to an election, but there's a lot going on in the world right now aside from the election. And my advice to all of you is to not let this become a distraction that would cause you to not focus on the upcoming election. So before we get into the video, I ask that you like the video. You can leave comments. I would love that. I would love to read them. And thank you for tuning in. So remember in late August, Kamala Harris, along with Tim Walz, had their first interview on CNN with Dana Bash. And it was an awful interview. It was pre-recorded and edited. And I believe it was only 15 minutes long. She had already been selected as the Democratic presidential nominee by, I think, a month and a half by that time, without doing any interviews at all. I find that rather strange. The first presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. It was not a fair debate. It was a 3-on-1 debate in favor of Kamala Harris. Trump was debating Kamala along with the two moderators who fact-checked him on just about everything, and not once did they fact-check her. But I will give Kamala some credit. She did a great job at baiting Donald Trump. And Trump took the bait hook, line, and sinker. But the first question that they asked her about our country being better off than it was 4 years ago, she completely dodged that question. She didn't answer it at all. Instead, she told her usual story about her being raised by a single mother in, a single-parent household. And I believe she did most of her growing up in Canada, outside of the U.S. But she never answered the question, and they never mentioned that. And she knows that the answer would be no. Our country is not better off than it was 4 years ago. And those of us who are everyday American citizens who pay our taxes will tell the truth and say, no, the country is not better off than it was 4 years ago. And it's a fact. I was waiting for her to say yes, but she could not because she had nothing. And the moderators were awful. I can't think of their names right now. I think one was David Mueller, and the other lady, I can't think of her name right now, but she is a sorority sister, a fellow sorority sister of Kamala Harris's. So we know that they have that connection. Also, Kamala Harris is friends with, I believe it's the president of NBC, or ABC, rather. And that's where she and her husband were introduced. So she was definitely in friendly territory the whole time. Meanwhile, Trump stepped into enemy territory willingly. Those mysterious pearl earrings that Kamala was wearing, that she wears quite often, there's actually a company, I believe their name is Nova. They make earpieces that are identical to the pearl earrings that you see her wearing. So did Kamala Harris have someone else in her ear that night, telling her what to say? If that is the case, then it was a 4-on-1 debate, which is not fair. I noticed that she seemed in rare form that night because she seemed very confident early on, completely different from how she typically is in her interviews. So that was a red flag. And there was a whistleblower who signed an affidavit saying that they were favoring Kamala Harris by not asking her certain questions and to fact-check Donald Trump on just about everything. So it was not a fair debate, so I cannot say that Kamala Harris won the debate. In my book, she's disqualified, and Donald Trump won the debate. He could have done better, yes. There were things that he could have actually debated her on that he did not bring up, that he failed to bring up. And I think a lot of it had to do with her bruising his ego about his rallies and all. And I don't know. You know how Donald Trump is. He has a big ego. But he's far more qualified to be president than Kamala Harris is. And there was a second assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump at his golf course in Florida. This time, the shooter was not able to fire off any shots, thankfully, and Secret Service noticed the barrel of a gun That was, I think they were in positioned themselves in bushes, but they should not have been able to get that close to a former president at their golf course. So once again, there was a flaw in Trump's security detail for Secret Service. And I blame a lot of these assassination attempts. I blame the media. Their rhetoric of Donald Trump over the last 9 years has been pretty ridiculous. I'm not saying that Trump is perfect, but I've never seen the media go after a former president or even a presidential candidate in this way. There's a group of people who do not want to see him in office again. He was not supposed to get elected the first time. A second time? I think if Trump were not running in this election, none of this would have happened. I don't even think he would have had the felonies and charges that were brought against him, the lawfare. If he had just ended his political career in 2021 when he left office, I think the media frenzy would have died down. But I'm glad he did not. And, he's been through a lot with the media, and it's ridiculous. Why can't we just have a fair election and let the people decide who they want to elect? And late last month, Janet Jackson said something about Kamala Harris being black, I think she said she didn't know that she was black. And the media went after her, especially D.L. Hughley, the comedian who thinks he knows anything and everything about politics and how blacks should vote. Well, I'll tell you, D.L. Hughley, you know nothing. He is one of the celebrities that the Democrats like to use to get us to vote for the Democrats. And in exchange, we get nothing out of it. But I have no problem with what Janet Jackson said. And she had just lost her brother, Tito Jackson, her older brother. She's grieving over that too. So for them to come after her like that for saying what she said is ridiculous. And a lot of people defended Janet Jackson. And I'm glad that people did that because there was nothing wrong with what she said. Based on what I've seen, Kamala Harris is not being transparent about her identity. She's using being black as her way of getting elected, or to increase her chances of getting elected and garnering support from the black community. But a lot of us are on to her. We don't buy it at all. And look at her upbringing. She was raised in a traditionally East Indian household, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't lie. Don't be dishonest. Be who you are and be proud of that. Don't try to be something you're not just to increase your status or your political status just because you're power hungry. And last week, the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, was indicted. And remember, last year, he gave P. Diddy, who we'll be mentioning a little bit later in this video, the key to the city. But apparently he was accepting money, I believe, from foreign countries or foreign organizations. And that's what they're indicting him for. Politicians do this all the time. They accept money from foreign countries in order to help with their campaigns. But I think it's because Eric Adams no longer was in support of the migrant crisis. He had seen what it had done to New York City and how New York City ran out of funding for the migrants. And once he went against it, his own party abandoned him, and now they're indicting him. And I believe it's the same prosecutor that indicted P. Diddy too. New York is not what it used to be. They've imported all of these people, these migrants, and they're prioritizing them over American citizens. And not just in New York, in other areas of the country as well, which is not right. And people are fed up with it, rightfully so. So P. Diddy was arrested in a Manhattan jail. Earlier this year, 2 of his homes were raided in Los Angeles and in Miami by the Department of Homeland Security. And if you're getting raided by the Department of Homeland Security, the feds, they usually have reason to raid your properties. It's a telltale sign that something big is about to happen. And you know, they could have shortly arrested him after the raid, but I think their reason for waiting was to use what's going on with him, P. Diddy or Diddy, as a distraction from the election. If a lot of us are distracted from the election, that will increase the Democrats of winning, probably. So they're doing whatever they can to distract us. So if you're not registered to vote, please register to vote. I'm not telling you how to vote, but definitely research the candidates and find out what their policies are and how that will affect you. And do not listen to only mainstream media, but seek out reliable grassroots sources. There is a lot of information that's available out there, but you must look for it and you must find it. It isn't going to always find you. But I don't think it's going to work, really. I don't think a lot of us will allow what's going on with Diddy to distract us from voting and the election. But we've had decades of P. Diddy shenanigans, and he was able to get away with a lot. I don't have sympathy for him. I never really thought that he was a good person. But in spite of his shenanigans, people continued to support him because he was protected. There was a group that was protecting him, protecting anything from getting out about him. Until recently, he filed a lawsuit against Diego, and he won. So it almost seems like someone is actually seeking out revenge on him. And I'm not saying that he's innocent. The things that he has done is no longer being covered up. Now it's starting to get exposed since he got out of line. And I even heard now they're trying to target Jay-Z and Beyonce. You know, there's a lot that goes on in Hollywood. A lot of celebrities, we think we know who they are, but they're not who they really are. Even a lot of people online, too, who have large followings. I think it's a good thing that a lot is being exposed now. A lot of what was hidden is now coming to light. And I would like to see this continue, because we deserve to know the truth. And one last thing I'll say about this. I don't think it's fair if they only go after black men or black celebrities, because there are celebrities of all nationalities who are involved in these types of things, who commit these types of crimes. Different organizations, politicians even. That old saying, no one is above the law, isn't always true. The truth is that there are people who are above the law, which is not fair, it's not right. But they have protected status to commit crimes and wash their hands clean of them. And there was the Appalachia school shooting in Georgia, and 4 people lost their lives, 2 students and 2 teachers, which was really sad. I don't understand why these things continue to happen. They shouldn't happen. Other countries don't have things like this happening in their country. But the shooter's father, I heard, gave the gun to his son as a Christmas present, even after the police had questioned him about something the year prior. I think it was for cyber threats. I think he was questioned by the FBI for that. But a child should not be allowed to own a gun, especially if they're not responsible. So I blame the parents, too, because these things should not happen. We had a lot of celebrity deaths last month. We lost James Earl Jones, Frankie Beverly, Tito Jackson, Chris Christopherin. I think he died a couple days ago. I think it was here this month, October. And even more recent, we lost John Amos. I heard that he passed away back in August, but the family didn't announce it publicly until just a couple days ago. And Dikembe Mutombo, the former NBA basketball player, he died also. So before I upload the video, there were a few things that I forgot to mention. One of them being Hurricane Helene, which was on the East Coast here 2 weeks ago. And she did a lot of damage, mainly in the North Carolina area. And there were a lot of people who lost their homes and who lost everything, essentially. And our government decided to only give them $750. And they said that FEMA had become insoluble because they had given all of the money away to migrants who came into this country illegally. And our government is continuing to send billions of dollars over to Ukraine, funding wars, and they're giving millions of dollars, billions probably, to illegals who have come into the country illegally, but only $750 for American citizens who have lost everything. That is terrible. It's really sad. Marcellus Williams. He was executed on September 24th, 2024, in the state of Missouri. He was a death row inmate who was executed by lethal injection in the state of Missouri. Hours before his execution, the U.S. Supreme Court denied a stay of execution, and the prosecutor from the original trial said that he was in fact innocent, and that there was no evidence tying him to the crime over the 1998 murder of Felicia Gale, who was a newspaper reporter. But they decided to continue with his execution, and he was executed by lethal injection anyway. So whoever's responsible, whether it's the governor of Missouri or I'm not sure exactly, but they need to be held accountable. And they also need to be voted out of office or taken out of office as soon as possible. This should not have happened. He should not have lost his life like that. And supermodel Naomi Campbell was banned from, I believe it was her charity, for mismanaging the money and spending money on hotels, trips, cigarettes even. So a lot has come out. September 2024, it felt very unusual to me. It just felt like there was a lot going on in the world all at once. I'm hoping that October will be a lot slower and that, things won't be as crazy as they have been. I know this can be hard to take at times. You just have to step away from everything and decompress and take care of your mental health because it'll drive you crazy. It really will. So always remember to take care of yourself first. I'm praying that, things will get better for a lot of us because nothing has been the same since 2020. And even further back since 9/11. I don't think our society has progressed. I don't feel like it has anyway, especially not since 2020. Things have just, oh wow. Maybe I'll save that for another video, but please remember to take care of yourself. Thank you for watching. Our time is now. Let's change the world.